there's always been this impulse to try and somehow get away from this constant maelstrom of suffering and whatnot. And we see this in virtually every religious tradition. But the thing is that up until now, pursuing that generally could only lead to a kind of realization, I think, that, or let me put it this way, it could only lead to a state of kind of spiritual development where that sense of alienation from the world broke down in some way or another. Like, you know, you go off to your little cave in the mountains and you meditate all day, every day, and eventually you're going to come back down from the mountain like, hey, you know what, maybe life's not so bad, right? Because that sense of being alienated, from being just kind of separated off from a dead, uncaring world, you know, it eventually kind of dissolves away. And we kind of, it's almost like through the very process of kind of trying to depersonalize ourselves, we open up this pathway to kind of reintegrating ourselves with the world. But now with transhumanism, it's like there's now an avenue where that impulse, which Steiner would call the Luciferic impulse, can do its thing, but now it's got an actual exit door where it actually is, seemingly at least, possible to completely escape the biological body, to completely excise ourselves from this natural world that we so often feel ourselves to be betrayed by. And so what ends up happening here, I think, is this. We end up being driven by this sense that the world is fallen, the world is grotesque, the world doesn't care about us, right? And so we dream up this puffy cloud heaven within this virtual hyperspace that we're going to try and put ourselves in. And escaping the planet, you know, is often very times part of this narrative too, this idea of, oh, well, you know, the Earth is just this cooling rock out floating in space, and eventually the sun's going to gobble it up and we're all going to die. So we need to go to, you know, some exoplanet so that we can create some kind of Eden there. And it's the same thing. It's this idea that we are just these wandering nomads in a world that just doesn't care about us. And I think that even beyond what is or is not technologically feasible, there's a deeper question here about, like, what would be the end goal of that? Like, would we really be alive anymore? Would we really be human anymore if we were just uploaded into these like giant supercomputers that are like buried, you know, in the ground and cooled by liquid nitrogen? Like, is that really being alive just because you don't have to die per se, just because you can have all of your weird fetishes satisfied by the internet at any time, you know? Like, I think like, if we're able to really kind of reacquaint ourselves with pain and suffering and death in a way that these things feel less hostile, then that whole transhumanist mission itself starts to seem like something very grotesque and very dehumanizing, quite literally.